composition window in VSDC. Here we have, as you can see right here, I got two objects in here already. My black, just an image. This is a black image, and this is actually a slideshow. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you what you can do down here in the composition window. Now, as I said, VSDC calls it a composition window, but it's compositing. And compositing is, and I know you might say, what in the world is compositing? Compositing is when you take two or more images and put them together to get one thing, one result. So you take one and you make one. One and one is two, but you make one. But you take a video or image, or two videos and an image, or even more than that, and you put them all together and you make one. You get one video or one picture out of the couple things that you put together. And that's what's called compositing. And this is where you do it down here in the composition menu. And when you really think about it in VSDC or any video editor for that matter, you're taking more than one object and putting them together to make one item. So that's what the composition window does. So let me go ahead and break this here down somewhat. This first layer across the top, all this does is identify the columns. It tells you what each column does. This column, when I say column, I'm talking about up and down. This column shows and hides the objects, on each layer. These are the layers. And this here just identifies that this area is the composition mode. This is the waveform for, this column shows a waveform for each layer. This will show the context menu for the item that you select. And the layers are the names of each layer in this column, this particular column. But if you click on these up here at the top, they won't do anything because they're just identifiers for them. Okay, so as you see, if I click on them, they don't do anything. They're just the labels for each column. But now if I drop down to either one of these, say if I click this eyeball right here, you see right now, the layer that's showing up here is the top layer. This one right here. So you see that my black image is showing right now. If I click the eyeball, I said eyeball, I should say eye, it's going to hide it. And by hiding that layer, it protects you from doing anything to it that you should not want to do, or that you might not want to do. So if you're doing some editing, you can't mess with that black layer. The only thing you can do with it, really, you can move it to a different position in the timeline, but you can't select it up here. If I move this, you see you can't even see it, so you can't select it. You can't do anything to that. Let me make sure I put that in the right space, okay? Alright, let me turn the eyeball back on. And if I come over here to lock, it does something very similar, just in reverse actually. If I click lock, and like I said, I can still move it. I can still move the place and time, but when I come up here to the window up here, you notice I can't move it, I can't select it, I can't do anything. I can move the layer underneath of it, but I can't do anything to that black layer. So let me put this back where it belongs at. So that actually keeps you from doing anything to a layer that you don't want to do. So by either making it not visible or putting the lock on it, it prevents you from doing something that you don't want to do. Now, let's see. So we're going to bend over that. We're going to skip over blend right now, and we're going to go to waveform. And I don't, because this is an image, it doesn't have a waveform with it. I could have some sound with it, but you tend to have sound with videos. So I have a waveform on my video, so we're going to drop down here to this video, and we're going to look at the waveform. So what I did there, let me go back here. What I did is I went up here to waveform, I clicked show waveform, and you see my waveform showed up underneath it here. So let me expand that so you can see it a little bit more. And I'll click that again, and I'll hit the zoom. And there you go, you can see it a little bit better. Let me see if I can move that down so you can see it even more. Yeah, okay. Now, when I click the waveform again, I want to show you what these things are. Okay, show waveform. Actually, like I said, it lets you see the waveform. Yeah, of course, you know, if you hit hide waveform, it's going to hide it. I'm not going to do it right now, but that's what it'll do. It'll just hide the waveform. Now this one here, where it says signal power, what that actually does, okay, is, I don't know if you noticed how it changed when I did that, but you have different audio effects up here, and I'm not going to go through them right now, but when you click that, it makes these available to you, you know, to work on. You can do things like normalize it, you can amplify it, fade in, fade out, silence, invert wave. You can do all of those things. But if you didn't have that selected, I mean the signal power thing selected, you wouldn't be able to do that. So what that does is it actually makes your audio editing things available to you. It basically turns on your audio editing. Also, what it does is it shows you, okay, you see how this is down here right now? It's just showing you a bunch of lines. But notice the way it looks when you click that. It will actually color these in. I don't really, to be honest with you, I really don't know how useful that is for it to be colored in, but it does actually color it in. You can see what I'm saying down there, as opposed to if I didn't. Once I click it again, you see how these are colored in as opposed to the other way it's just lines. Let's do that. So you see it's just the squiggly lines there. This right here, resulting signal, that's the way it looks after you add whatever effect you added to it up here in audio editing. If I added the amplitude, if I added the flange or chorus or whatever effect I added to it, it just shows you the difference in the way the waveform you know, the way it looks to you. And if I click this one, it just shows you the source signal. The original signal, like if you didn't have the signal power on. Down here, these are your zooms, so you can see the waveform better. So right now I got it on 4. If I click it to 1, it'll just be smaller. You see down here now it's smaller. All right, okay. Now, if I come over here to the next one, this shows you the context menu. So let me drop down here to this, either one of these layers, it doesn't matter. It doesn't show you the same thing, but it depends on which one you're working on. So if I come over here and I look at that, it opens this context menu. But I usually use this from whatever item I'm working on. I just right click it and hit, you know, because that menu will pop up if you right click from wherever. And this over here where it says layer, the only thing this really does, I mean, is let you rename the layer. Say, like right now, it's named Black 260. Well, actually, it's named Layer 2. But it makes it easier for you to identify. So I can go ahead and I can rename that to, I'm just going to rename it to Black right now. And that'll be Black. Alright, that's Black. And this one here I can rename to Roses. And let's see, let me name this to Roses. Roses. Alright. And so that's what the that's what that layers column allows you to do. It just allows you to rename it. Now, the other thing, I skipped across blend over here because that is some really complicated stuff. And let me, waveforms, let me hide the waveform. Okay, and let me shrink this back down real quick. I like uniformity. Alright, so now let's go over here and look at blend for a minute. And this is where stuff gets really interesting on this. Okay, let me close that real quick. Blend, let's go up here to our top layer. And by the way, some of these things in the composition menu, these blend modes, because that's what these are different blending modes. Some of these blending modes actually work on the active layer, the one that you see up here. Okay, and some of them work on the bottom layer. Like I said, it gets very interesting. This is some deep stuff right here. So I did some research on it, and I found out there's these guys that came up with these formulas for these blending modes, which are Porter and Duff. Those are named Porter and Duff. And you can do some research on it and find out some of the stuff. Like I said, it's really deep. The actual mathematical formulas to how they work and all of that. Because it's not obvious just doing it. And some of the things work from the bottom layer, some of them work from the top layer. But you can get some very interesting effects. You can lighten your video, you can darken your video, you can make your video look more natural, just by blending stuff together. And I'm saying video, it's not necessarily just your video, it could be images that you're working with. But you can do these things, you make them look quite unnatural, and when I say unnatural, I mean out of this world kind of stuff, by blending these things together. But it's got different blending modes, and I'm going to show you some of them right now. By the way, I don't know all of these. Some of them I do know, but there's a lot to it, and eventually I'm going to get around to demonstrating as many of them as I can. But I can also tell you that it's going to take some time for me to do it because it's really some deep stuff. But okay, the top one up here you see is blend. And what blend will do, okay, I already have it selected. It's already selected. It's automatically selected. But what blend will do, if you notice when you come up here to opacity, you can turn the slider down, and what it does is it lets you see what's underneath of it. And by the way, here, what you need to know, this is something important that you should know. Opacity is not transparency. Let's see, let's drop down here to mask real quick. We'll take a look at that. You see that mask actually masks that layer that I hit. And if I come up here, come back over here, and I do the same thing with opacity, you see right there that it's letting more light in so that you can see. The other thing that I want to show you, I want to make this point to you, is whatever the item is covering is what it affects. You notice as I move this over here, this is visible. but the area underneath of it isn't. If you're familiar with other programs like Photoshop and things like that, they have masks that you can draw on your item. Well, you don't have that option in VSDC. You can shrink this down. Let me explain this a little bit better. In Photoshop and even in some of the other video editors, you can put a mask or you can select, you can draw a selection, like you might want to draw a circle or something like that to mask something. I can actually do that by adding a free shape and then making that shape like I want, or by making an ellipse, I can select the area like that. But that means I'm limited to making a round area, or you know, trying to make a free shape to make whatever I want, you know, to select the area with it. And which you can do, but it's going to be quite complicated to do it with. So, but yeah, these things only select the area. I can move it. I can select this area. I can select that area. I can select that area. But I'm not as free as I would like to do to make those selections as I would be with something else. And of course, you know, Photoshop is not a video editor. But some other video editing programs make it more easier for you to do those type of things. Now, let's see. Let me resize this here. Right here. Okay, and let me go back to blend real quick. Now, let's go to something a little bit more drastic. I'm not going to go through all of these things. Let's go down here to divide. And remember I said that you can do some very unnatural things. Well, Black and Happy Mother's Day. Down here you see how this actually did some crazy stuff to it. But let's try something else. Overlay. Okay. And let's move overlay over and see what happens with that. And you see how it changes that. So the best way to find what you want to do with this is just to try each thing and see which kind of thing you want. Put some objects in there and fool with these here and see what you get out of it. Another important thing you need to know is, I think I already said it in this video, is the only thing it affects is what's covered in the thing. So as you can see, as far as your project is concerned, you notice how this is like that, but when I move this back over it, how that area of it changes. Whatever is covered by it, you notice how this side is normal, and when I move it back over, it's like that. So that's all that's affected by whatever blend mode you use. So let's see, that's that for that. Let's go back to blend and go back over here. So there's some pretty amazing things you can do with this here. And as I said, what it does is it blends the two together to make it appear to be one thing. Now, all of this stuff that you have overhanging over here won't be in your video if you export it like that. It's only going to be what you have here, in the size of the project window. So let's see, that's that for that. I did the sound. I believe I did the sound. Yes, I did. And I did the blending modes. Let's see. I did the eye. I did the lock. And I identified the layers. So that's about it for the composition area. As I said, you can find out a lot more information about it if you look on the internet. Porter and Duff came up with the formulas for these things a while back. And there's actually a lot of compositing modes and blending modes that are out there. VSDC doesn't have all of them. You can also look at Photoshop. If you're a Photoshop user, you can look at Photoshop and you can see just how many of them there are. VSDC doesn't have quite as many as they do. But yeah, you can do some very interesting things with this. So everyone, if you had the time to go ahead and, look into that, or if you don't want to, you can just play around with these and see what you can get when you're working on whatever project you're working on. I'm quite sure you can come up with some quite interesting things.